Friends, the Lord is with you. Thank you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Many of the disciples remarked, "This sort of talk is hard to endure. How can anyone take it seriously?" Jesus was fully aware that the disciples were murmuring in protest at what he had said. "Is this a stumbling block for you?" he asked them. "What then, if you were to see me ascend to where I was before? Is it the Spirit that gives life? The flesh in itself is useless. The words I have spoken to you are spirit and life. Yet among you there are some who do not yet believe." Jesus knew from the start, of course, that there were ones who would refuse to believe and the ones who would hand him over. And he went on to say, "This is why I have told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted by our God." From that time on, many of the disciples broke away and would not remain in the company of Jesus. Jesus said to the 12, "Do you want to leave me too?" Simon Peter answered, "To whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe, and we are convinced that you are the Holy One of God." Friends, the gospel of the Lord. Praise you, Lord Jesus Christ. Have something that happens, you get this flashback, and then all of a sudden you lose it. And you thought it was a really good line. I lost it actually. Shoot, it was really good. It hit me like I was working in that school. Maybe it'll come back. My friends, I really love Scripture. I mean, Scripture it does something. I don't know what it does. It's kind of it gives me a little bit of excitement. And part of it is because every Sunday we end up with a different piece of it. Now, number one, we get 3 different years, we get all that stuff. We're in year 8 now. So, but part of this is you hear this gospel and you say, what is he talking about, right? Is this shock here? Well, what are you talking about? Let me put it in context. What's happening here is you have to take all these last few Sundays, and we're talking about, this is the section of John's Gospel. It's called the end of the disciples in the signs. John's Gospel is divided into 2 parts, the book of signs and the book of wonders. This is the ending of the book of signs, and it's also the ending of what we call the bread of life discourses. So if you all have been at Eucharist for the past 2 weeks, we've heard about I'm the bread of life, I'm the bread of life, I'm the bread of life. John gets a little repetitive, but he keeps repeating that. And the previous week was, unless you eat the flesh and drink the blood of the Son of Man and will have life. That's what the disciples are reacting. Okay, so that's the context of this gospel. Because otherwise it's doesn't this shock you? So the disciples they're noticeably upset, right? They can't quite figure out this eating flesh and drinking blood thing. It just doesn't quite work within the context of their timing system, or their belief system, actually. And as a result, the gospel says many return for their former way of life. But Peter says, we've come to believe, and we are convinced that you are the Holy One. My question to us is, are we convinced like that? Are we convinced that this God that you and I have come to believe in is the Holy One? I actually believe that you and I live in a world of kind of, I'll call it, a lot of words. A world in which we don't have a lot of religious imagination. We're kind of in a surge or a deficit of religious imagination. We live in a world that has what we like black and white answers. We like, we live in a world of computers, ones and zeros. And we do combinations, everything will come out correctly. And I like servitude like that. I like everything, this, then that. I love that game college. What? There you go. Logic is a wonderful system to work with, and when it works, it's perfect. But the problem is that the spiritual life doesn't work like that. The spiritual life is filled with surprises, and it's filled actually with what lies fundamentally at the heart of God, and that's mystery. So every time you and I run into it, we run into this confusion because we run directly into the heart of mystery rather than running into the heart of the certitude of life. Because it doesn't make sense. Fundamentally at the heart of God is mystery. So who is this God of our understanding? Is it the God that you and I grew up with? I hope, actually, that the God that you and I grew up with is different than the God that you and I walk with every day of our lives. Do you realize that as Christians, we have, just in the Scriptures alone, not taking any part of our tradition, just in the Scriptures, we have over 120 different names for God. 120 different titles that we give to God. My Muslim friends, they have 99 names. They've been praised with the 99 names of Allah. My Hindu friends, they have thousands. of them. They call God all kinds of different names. We live in a world that is rich with the imagery of God. And the only way that you and I can ever relate to a God who is fundamentally mystery is to try to give that God some reality. And we do that by our names, right? We give it Wonder Counselor, Prince of Peace, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, right? All of that, especially at Christmas, we love it. But what we're trying to do in that whole thing is make sense out of this fundamental mystery that you and I experience in our life. 120 different things just in Scripture. The only way that you and I can do it is to put God in the Word. But my friends, there's a great teaching. And it comes from the Fourth Lateran Council. You're going to the Council, Fourth Lateran Council. 1215, okay? So we're talking about a long time ago. Fourth Lateran Council in 1215 said, basically said this. I'm going to translate the Latin and make it all sense. They concluded this. That no matter what you and I say, or how we understand God, our imagining, or even our verbalization, will fall far shorter of the reality than they will be closer to. Isn't that's a pretty awesome concept. In 1215, the church recognized that no matter what you and I say about God, no matter what we do, or even the terms that we give, we're going to fall far shorter from the reality of God than we are trying to fall closer to, right? This reality. What that does for me, though, is it opens up a world of possibility rather than a world of restriction. This is what I really believe the fundamental call of the gospel this weekend is this. Do not let your religious imagination end up as religious stagnation. How big is your God? Is your box big enough to allow a God to be bigger than what you can possibly conceive? And then, when you think it's that big, hang on, because then God will blow open that box as well. It'll happen. It happens every time you take that step in the spiritual life. Just when you think you've got it figured out, boom, something else happens, and the whole thing is moved. It really doesn't get ruined, my friend. It's just that God blows open these little boxes that our minds conceptualize God in. St. Thomas, now, even though I'm not a Thomas by a lot of it. Well, but St. Thomas was pretty awesome scholar, right? Wrote the Summa Theologica, his masterwork, changed life, and it really, like, St. Thomas part of his Summa figures out how many ages he can fit on the head of a pig. But the reality is he was a phenomenal scholar. At the end of his life, at the end of his work, as he finished the Summa, the last line, some people say he had a mental breakdown. Some people say he had a beatific vision. The last line he wrote is, "Real death. The life. It is not. It is not." I actually believe that he had a beatific vision. He was so in tune with the reality of this God and so deeply immersed himself in the life of this God who he was trying to explain that he came probably face to face with that mystery and writing it. I can't say anymore or do anymore or write anymore because what I have experienced I could never put into words. It's why in liturgy we simply proclaim what John's Gospel has. Holy, holy, holy. We're not proclaiming, well, let's not do this because we're not proclaiming something like we're not making a public statement about God. What we're doing is reiterating the words of the Gospel writer John, who says, when he encounters God, I can say nothing else. Holy, holy, holy. That's it. Those were the terms in which he gave to this experience of God, which is so fundamentally mysterious and so fundamentally transforming that it changed his life. Here's the real catch, though. You see, my friends, if that is true, if we believe that, and we're back to logic, if we believe that God is constantly encouraging us in our religious imagination to encounter a God in new ways, what's that going to logically do to us as the church? Change us, right? It's going to cause us to change. So the God that I grew up with is going to necessarily, if I continue in religious imagination, be different. The God I believe in today is going to be different than the God I believe in when I was 6, and the God I believed in when I was 2 or 3 years. The God I believed in when I was 80 hopefully is different than the God I believe in. The beauty of that, too, is that if we are the church, we are the people of God, we'll continue to change as well. So, will the church look like it does today in 40 years? I hope and pray that God does it. This is not bad. Don't get me wrong. This experience of church is not bad. But I hope in 40 or 80 or 180 years that the church looks differently, probably even celebrates liturgy differently than it does today. Because if we're not allowing our religious imagination to take us to that next level, then we're not going to change. Right? So, and if we are, we will change. Will we different? The fundamental thing, though, that really binds this whole thing together, and I'll tell you, this whole trip thing is really kind of trying to happen. Having walked around Southern Ireland for 11 days, I really understand this whole bread and wine thing. They drink a lot of wine. Got that? But I understand this reality that Jesus would use bread and wine, labor and food, to describe himself. Because those two things are so fundamental to who we are as people. They are what allow us to survive, right? So it makes a lot of sense that Jesus would say, I carry you for life. I carry food that feeds you for eternity. My hope and my prayer is that we let our religious imagination continue to turn on it, continue to consume that in our lives. Mold it around to pick it over, to talk about it with one another, to explore and imagine what a world might look like if we would let God be bigger than what we currently believe with God. Ours isn't inadequate. Our image of God isn't bad. It's not weak. It's not inadequate. It's exciting, it's growing, it's nurturing, and at the same time, it's challenging. Because every time we think we got it figured out, God says, imagination, by its nature, expands the imaginary. Once imagined is expanded by the imagination. Can we allow our God to burst the seams of our boxes and open up the world of possibility, of potential, and of hope? Just imagine. Just imagine this. Maybe